If you're a game developer using Unity, you will come across the concept of serialization and deserialization. Those are so important, and you will need to make important decisions here. Now, it is very dangerous because at first it may look like you can just, don't really pay close attention to serialization, deserialization. Just use what Unity gives you, which is usually the JSON Utility namespace. But this is dangerous because it is not that easy. So I do a lot of consulting for my clients, normally studios, in terms of optimization, but often enough as well for feature development. And I know for sure that one of the things that they regret the most is to take the decision of choosing a serialization method lightly quite at the beginning. So before we go further, let me tell you what serialization is. Just within a couple of paragraphs or maybe even just sentences. Serialization is the art or the science, depending on how you consider yourself to be, of storing your usually gameplay or game state data into bytes. Normally, you can think of this as saving your game state into a file, just to simplify things. And deserialization is the opposite. You take a file, which is normally a save game, and then you put it back into memory, into your own classes, so that you recover your game state. Usually this is important when you don't expect the player to fully finish your game in one session. Right? At some point, your player will need to sleep or to take a break or to have lunch or something, so they will need to serialize the data or save the game, close the game, and at some point when they are done doing their stuff and they can go back to the ludopathy, they will need to load it back into memory or deserialize it. Now, this is just deserialization and deserialization concept applied to save games, but it goes much beyond that. We can also apply this even within the same game session. Sometimes you will just want to move the player from scene to scene, and depending on the way that you do this and implement this, you may also want to do serialization. Often enough, you will also use something like the player prefs, which is also kind of a method of serializing data. So there you go. You need to be aware of serialization. But it can also go much more beyond this and talk about serialization and deserialization for networking. Okay, you just have data in a class or structure. You need to compare that to, let's say, bytes transmit over the network, and the receiving part will need to deserialize that, which means, again, deserialization. Now, the most important thing, as I told you, is to consider that it is not a decision that you need to make just within the first 5 minutes of starting a new project. This is not something you should take lightly. As I said, studios often come to me, and this is one of the biggest regrets they have. I started using JSON Utility, and we continued going for that, and then complexity grew, and it did not support the stuff that we needed. This is very often. Or I went for JSON.NET, the Newtons of one, and at some point it was just not enough, or I had versioning problems and all that. So let me simplify all of this for you because I don't want to make long videos. So there is basically two scenarios here, and I'm going to give you my suggestion, but you need to do your own research. Okay, let me be clear. Scenario number one is that you are just prototyping, or you are trying to prove a concept or an idea, or you are doing a game jam, whatever it is, something that is not going to be sold. It's not production ready. In this case, do whatever you want. Here I suggest you use something very simple and lean, like the Unity's built-in JSON utility. Okay, that's enough. Don't go much more than that because you need to focus on the main idea. You don't need to focus on serialization. Now, if you are going for production builds, here you need to think about a couple of things. You need your solution to be robust. You need your technology to be performant. And that's usually complicated to achieve both, especially if you don't really think about your decisions here. So if you're going for production, here my suggestions are to go either for protobuf.net, or you can also go or MessagePack. Okay? Reason is that for robustness, you need to take into account that it needs to be stable. It needs not to be corrupted. It also needs to offer you features like versioning or migrations, which is, at some point you will evolve your data structures. So what will happen to the save games that your players had before updating to your game? So let's say you have a character class and you have your character name, the level, the class, the race, whatever. And then at some point you make a patch because you're working on a feature and you release it on Steam that adds something like the height, something like this. Or even worse, you remove the I don't know, the whatever, the weight of the character. So how do you move or migrate the old data or the old save games into the new format version? That's also something that belongs to robustness. You need to be very careful with this, okay? And this is why I insist that you pay close attention to your serialization choice, because not all of them support versioning or migrations, and not all of those support it in a robust and performing way. One of my clients, for example, had one migration system that every time the migration kicked in, it took a couple of seconds. So just imagine freezing your game during gameplay for 2 seconds. And that's a problem. It was not even during gameplay. Every time that character did something, they just, set a key value pair or something like this in the data structure, and that triggered a full serialization or save game of the gameplay state. Just imagine every interaction I do in a game ends in a 2-second freeze. That's not something that scales. So you need to be careful there. So in terms of the suggestions that I gave you, I really like protobuf.net, but like I said, MessagePack is also a nice option. And don't take me wrong, there are many, many more options out there. Like I mentioned before, like for example, the JSON Utility or the Newton Soft. JSON.net, you also have even BSON, which is the binary format of JSON. We also have even something like player pairs, like I was telling you, or even you can misuse scriptable objects to do the deserialization and serialization for you. But at the end, it is the same serialization, deserialization. But you need to be careful here. And there are many other ways of doing serialization, deserialization, but those are simple suggestions. Those are starting points. So things to be aware of when you choose your serialization method is the garbage collector allocations or GC allocs, because serializing, deserializing normally takes memory, okay, or generates garbage. This is very crucial. A very crucial concept to take into account, especially if you are doing a VR game where you cannot have dropped frames. You also have latency considerations, especially if you are in a multiplayer game. Memory usage, okay, related to the garbage collector allocations, but also memory usage. The document output size. So especially if you are doing multiplayer, you don't want to be sending megabytes of data just for a position update, right? So careful again here, because every serialization technique has different properties in terms of document size. Okay? Basically the bytes that you generate, how many of those you generate, how efficient it is at compressing as well. So that's another one, compression. And obviously data migrations, which we already talked about. So like I said, if you are using prototyping code, just stick to the simplest one, JSON Utility is usually enough. The toJSON and the fromJSON methods, that's usually enough. If you are doing something live for production, please spend a couple of days thinking through this. And my suggestions, like I said, are protobuf.net and MessagePack. There are basically 2 ways that I can help you here. Further is that one, in the Unity Performance Task Force membership, I published a module that covers serialization and deserialization in depth, which means basically what options are there, how to use each of the options that I propose, benchmarks, so that at the end of the module, you will know for sure what is best. And for that, you can just go to the video description to join the Unity Performance Task Force or whatever. I don't care. if it's helpful for you, then great. It's been helpful for other people and other studios. The second way that I can help you is that if you are working in a game studio or you are running even a game studio and you need a bit of consulting because you need quick solutions and you need information from people who have been working in the industry for a long time, then you can also book a consulting call. For that, just go as well in the video description and click on the consulting link. I hope this video was useful for you. I hope that it actually serves as a starting point for your serialization and deserialization strategies. Let me know what serialization methods at the end you went for and your experiences with that. As well, if you have any questions, I know that I haven't been very active on YouTube and I want to change that. So also leave your questions. I will try to address them as soon as possible. All right. As I said, I hope it was useful. Talk to you soon.